So the affirmation is, I am worthy of health, wealth, and happiness. This is a real simple, straightforward affirmation about what this teaching is all about. What we want to do is to understand the teaching and then be able to apply it to our daily lives. And a fundamental part of this teaching is to change the way that we think. The affirmation that we use today is really straightforward, and it says simply, I am worthy. Let's say that together 3 times. I am worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy. You and I don't realize it as clearly and as much as we should, but that simple statement, that simple affirmation is one that every one of us need. And we need it because of the negativity and because of the kind of conditioning that we have all had in our lives. It's nobody's fault. It's simply the way it is. And the worthiness of ourselves and the ability that we have to see ourselves as worthy of anything, but especially worthy of health, wealth, and happiness, really is important and fundamental to the quality of life that you and I have. We have a quotation for you this morning. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. The founders of spiritual movements and faith all talked about changing the way that we think. The way that we think about our relationship with the universe and with the divine, the way that we think about ourselves, the way we think about the world, the way that we think. And we think constantly. And one of the fundamentals of this movement is that we are thinking constantly, and our thoughts create things. And one of the things we say so often is, thoughts in mind create after their kind. So as you think, and as I think, as all of us think, that is the way that our lives move. Jesus talked about that to all of the people around him when he was talking to them about changing the way that they were thinking, about themselves, about life, about everything that they had been taught, because we condition and we're able to condition ourselves and the way that we see life in this fashion. And so health, wealth, and happiness are a potential power in your life and in my life, but the issue is whether we choose. And a lot of the choosing that we do in our lives, we do unconsciously. And when we do it unconsciously, we still do it. How many of you have ever seen that little thing with a picture with the devil sitting on somebody's shoulder, telling you, do this, do that? Think of it as a vulture. There's a little vulture sitting on our shoulder. And that little vulture is sitting there whispering things to us most of the time and also making observations about what it can devour. And the vulture is telling us, you're not worthy. You're not worthy. One of the things we know about Western society is that self-esteem is one of our biggest problems. Whether we acknowledge it or not, every one of us has that problem because we have been raised in that environment. And we're raised in that environment by well-intentioned people. And when you're a baby, what happens? When you're a baby, everybody loves you, right? It's goo-goo and gaga, and he's beautiful and all of this. Now, how many of you remember that? How many of you remember those conversations over the crib? There were tons of them. They pushed you down the street. You were the cutest thing in the world. Didn't matter whether you're rich or poor, what you had or didn't have. Didn't matter. None of it mattered. But everybody adored you. Everybody loved you. And everybody was saying wonderful things about you. And then as soon as you began to hear and comprehend, they stopped. Even the people who loved you, and especially the people who loved you, stopped. And they stopped. Why? Because they wanted to make you understand life. All of those people that were around you were there to keep you safe, to guide you and direct you, to help you out. How many of them said all of the time, you're wonderful, you're great, that's a magnificent thing that you're doing? What did they say? They watched what you did, and then they told you, for the most part, what you did wrong. Or they told you what you needed to do to be right. And therein lies the beginning of all of us. And go back and look at your early life, and look at your childhood, and look at the times that you have been impacted by circumstances and situations that have taken place in your life. What's the affirmation? I am worthy of health, wealth, and happiness. So often in our lives, when we are faced with health, wealth, or happiness, we may enjoy it in the moment, but sometimes we may say to ourselves, I don't deserve this. And so what I'm going to ask you this week is to ask yourself, where do my negative thoughts come from? And so there are 2 things that I think I wanted to share with you this morning about where your negative thoughts and processes can come. And no matter how far along you are in truth study and understanding, every one of us gets that whispering question sometimes that brings in negativity. And the negativity comes because, number one, of our childhood and the way that we're raised. That's just the part of what happens. But the other thing that has happened to all of us that we really don't tumble to or understand completely and fully is technology. It's great. Technology is great. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. It's magnificent. But technology has done a great deal to feed the vulture that sits on your shoulder that tells you what you can't do. Not only what you can't do, but what you shouldn't do and what you shouldn't try to do because you're not good enough. So how has technology done that? The way that technology has done that is that technology, I'm not talking about computers. I'm not talking about the technology that's just in this last decade or so. I'm talking about the technology that's come about in the last 100, 150 years. That technology has reshaped our culture, and it has reshaped our culture in a negative way because it has set standards for every one of us. It has told us what is acceptable and what's not. It's told us how we should behave and how we should not. It has told us that, and it has set the bar. It sets the bar for what it is that most of us want, and we want it because we see it and it's there. I think it was in 1880, 2.5% of the high school-aged children in America went to high school. 2.5% in 1880. Now you fast forward to now, and so now we go to high school, we get educated. In 1880, 1890, how many people went to the movies? How many people saw a commercial? And in 1880, in 1850, in 1890, in 1910, that was shaping. It wasn't the technology, but it was the information of the day. It was shaping, it was telling people, this is what you want. You want a California bungalow. You want to dress with ruffles, and you want this. So the bar is set, and our minds are operating. What do we tell children? When you sit down with all the negativity, when we're trying to help them out and, to make great lives for them, we're telling them what they did wrong in life, right? We want to tell them, you can do anything you want. The world is full of limitless possibilities. We're telling them the right thing, but then in training and educating them, we're filling them with negativity because we're correcting them always. And if you live in a life of correction, what happens? You begin to say, oh my goodness, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. And so I've got to do something to be right. And so the question is, where do my negative thoughts come from? Our negative thoughts come from our life experience and from the lived out values and experiences that each and every one of us have had. Our childhood is our childhood. That's the way it is. It's just a reality that from your earliest time, you and I and every human being is filled with correction and, to a large extent, negativity. And that negativity begins to tell us, you can't, you can't, you can't. You shouldn't, you shouldn't, you shouldn't. We need to remember that our conscious mind is operating all the time. So we are making choices. You and I are making choices. And our choices are whether we want to be the people that we want to be, whether we want to have the life that we want to have, or whether we are going to have the life that we are seeing that someone else is telling us we ought to have. And that creates a big problem, because what's the affirmation? I am worthy of health, wealth, happiness. That is a dynamic and magnificent spiritual principle, that we are worthy of those three things and a lot more. Our lives are filled with infinite possibilities, and within those infinite possibilities, we have the choice always how it is that we think and how it is that our minds operate. Because the good news is that I am worthy of health, wealth, and happiness isn't just some Pollyanna kind of statement, but it is reality and it is fact that every one of us are worthy of that. We're worthy of health. We're worthy of wealth. We're worthy of happiness. And all of that is relative. Health, wealth, and happiness is relative to what it is that you want in life, not what has been presented to you. The things that are presented to you technologically in the last 150 years are presented to us so that we can make informed choices. That's the magnificence of it, to decide, whether we want to live in a certain way or have certain things. But what we miss is that we fail in so many ways to take responsibility for the fact that you and I are precisely where we need to be and where we are because we have brought ourselves to that point. And we have brought ourselves to that point by the way that we think. And we know for a fact that this affirmation is true. We know for a fact that every one of us has negative thoughts and feelings. We know for a fact that all of this that surrounds us is here for us to make choices and for us to gain an understanding and realization of who and what we are. Of who and what we are. And who and what we are was said very plainly, very clearly in Scripture and in teaching and in our Christian faith. But the understanding of it is what we talk about here every Sunday, and we talk about in centers and churches like ours all around the country and around the world. And that is the truth will set you free. And the good news, that good news is the truth will set you free. And what is the truth? We said that before. That you and I are created in the likeness and the image of who? The Creator. And if we're created in the likeness and image of the Creator, then we have the qualities of the Creator. And if we have the qualities of the Creator, we have the ability to think and speak. And when we think and speak, and that goes forth in creative power. God spoke, and the world was created. Thoughts become things, and your life and my life will be the exact thing that we picture and see in our minds. And so what I invite you to do this week is look at where do your negative thoughts, if you have lots of them, you've got a lot of work to do. If you've got less of them, where do they come from? And it's good, once you see where they come from, is it from your childhood? Is it because, are you negative because of something that you don't have that you want because you saw it somewhere and you decided that was why you wanted to have it? It doesn't matter as long as you make the decision, you understand that your thought processes and that the dynamic of the power of mind and thought action is operating always. And whatever you say and whatever you think is being called forth into the universe and is being drawn to you and is being created in your life. Maybe it's time to just clear that part of thinking out of your mind and out of your heart, and you'll be amazed at the wonder and the grace that'll come to you when you begin to let that happen. It happens in healing. It happens in prosperity teaching. It happens in peace of mind and tranquility. All of it happens when we begin to look at ourselves and look at our minds and allow our minds to operate in concert and in union with the divine mind, and we allow the presence and power of God to come through us, to guide us and direct us, and to know that we are worthy of all things.